You're standing at a pharmacy counter. You've just handed over your prescription. The pharmacist types something in, looks at the screen, and tells you the price. $300. For a bottle of pills. 30 little capsules. Your stomach drops. You need these pills. You can't not take them. So you pull out your card, and you pay. Because what else are you gonna do? Not take your medicine? And you walk out feeling like something just happened to you that shouldn't be legal. Here's what you don't know. The pills in that bottle cost somewhere between $2 and $5 to manufacture. The active ingredient, the actual molecule that does the work, was probably synthesized in a factory in India or China for pennies per dose. Everything else, the patent, the brand name, the middlemen, the pharmacy benefit manager you've never heard of, the lobbyist in Washington you'll never meet, that's where your $300 went. Not into the pill, into the system around the pill, a system that was built carefully, deliberately over decades to make sure the price never comes down. And it gets worse, way worse. There's a diabetes drug called Ozempic. You've heard of it. It's everywhere. It's the weight loss drug celebrities can't stop talking about. In the United States, a month's supply costs $353. The estimated cost to actually manufacture a month's supply? 89 cents. That's not $89, that's 89 cents. The markup is 39,000%. On a drug, people need to stay alive. I'll say that again because it doesn't sound real. 39,000%. And Ozempic isn't even the worst example, it's just the most famous one right now. Look at these numbers. Imatinib, a leukemia drug that's been around for over 20 years, costs about $159 per month to manufacture. In the US, it's sold for over $9,000 per month. Humira, the world's best-selling drug for most of the last decade, costs about $1,700 per injection in the US. The estimated manufacturing cost? About $15. The hepatitis C cure, Sovaldi, launched at $84,000 for a 12-week treatment. The cost to produce it? Around $68. That's not a typo. 84,000 versus 68. These aren't obscure research chemicals. These are drugs that millions of people need, that have been manufactured at scale for years, and that cost almost nothing to produce. The prices aren't high because the drugs are hard to make. The prices are high because someone decided they could charge that much, and nobody stopped them. Now here's the part that changes everything. The factories that make the ingredients for these drugs, the actual chemicals, the actual molecules, aren't in New Jersey or Switzerland. They're in Gujarat, India. They're in Zhejiang, China. Asia already makes the medicine. It just doesn't get to sell it to you at the real price. Not yet. That's changing, and by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why your medicine costs what it does, who's keeping it that way, and how factories in Asia are about to blow the whole thing open. If you're into stories about hidden markups and the places quietly tearing them apart, hit like and subscribe. Don't miss what's coming. Seriously. And this one's personal. Not personal like sneakers or mattresses. Actually personal. People die from this. Real people, in the richest country on earth, die because they can't afford insulin. They ration their doses. They skip days. They cut pills in half. There was a 26-year-old man in Minnesota named Alex Smith. He aged off his mother's insurance at 26, as the law requires. His insulin suddenly cost over $1,000 a month out of pocket. He tried to ration it, stretching a month's supply to last longer. 27 days after losing his insurance, he was found dead in his apartment. He died of diabetic ketoacidosis. He died because he couldn't afford insulin. In the richest country on earth, a young man died because a drug that costs $3 to make was priced beyond his reach. That's not an anecdote. That's the system working exactly as designed, for everyone except the patient. And sometimes they just stop taking them, because the choice between medicine and rent isn't really a choice. That's what makes this different from every other video on this channel. Sneakers are a ripoff. Medicine is life or death. Okay, let's start with what drugs actually cost to make, because the numbers are going to make you angry. Insulin, the drug that keeps diabetics alive. It was discovered in 1921, over 100 years ago. The inventors sold the patent to the University of Toronto for $1 each because they believed it was too important to be owned by anyone. $1. They wanted insulin to be available to every diabetic on Earth. 100 years later, a single vial of insulin in the United States costs between $275 and $400 without insurance. The cost to manufacture that same vial? Between $2.28 and $3.42. A drug that costs $3 to make sells for $300. A drug whose inventors gave away the patent so nobody would profit from it became one of the most overpriced products in American commerce. That's not irony, that's cruelty. And here's how it happened. Frederick Banting and Charles Best discovered insulin in 1921 at the University of Toronto. Before that, a diabetes diagnosis was a death sentence. You'd waste away and die, sometimes within weeks. Insulin changed that overnight. It was one of the greatest medical breakthroughs in human history. Banting was offered a fortune for the patent. He refused. He said something to the effect of, "Insulin doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the world." He sold it to the university for $1. His partner did the same. The goal was that no company would ever be able to monopolize a drug this essential. Fast forward a century. 3 companies, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi, control virtually the entire global insulin supply. They've raised prices in lockstep, year after year, for decades. Between 2002 and 2013, the price of insulin in America tripled. Between 2012 and 2016, it doubled again. The manufacturing process didn't change. The drug didn't improve. The price just went up because all 3 companies raised their prices at the same time, and nobody stopped them. Banting gave it away for $1. A century later, people are dying because they can't afford it. But here's the thing most people don't understand. The molecule hasn't changed much. The manufacturing process is well established, high yield, and cheap. There's no technical reason insulin should cost more than $10 a vial. The reason it costs $300 is the system, and the system was built, very deliberately, to keep prices high. Let me walk you through how it works, because once you see the machine, you can't unsee it. Step 1. Patents. When a company develops a new drug, it gets a patent, usually 20 years of exclusive rights to sell it. That's supposed to let them recover their research costs. Fair enough. But here's the trick. Companies have gotten extremely good at extending those patents far beyond the original term. They tweak the formula slightly, they change the delivery method, same drug, new inhaler. They file for a new patent on the tweak. It's called evergreening, and it can keep a drug under patent protection for decades longer than intended. The original deal was, you get 20 years, then everyone can make it cheap. Evergreening breaks that deal. Step 2. Pharmacy Benefit Managers, PBMs. You've probably never heard of them, but they're the most powerful middlemen in the entire healthcare system. PBMs sit between the drug company and your pharmacy. They negotiate prices, they decide which drugs your insurance covers, and they take a cut of everything. Here's the insane part. PBMs actually make more money when drug prices are higher because their cut is a percentage, so they have zero incentive to bring prices down. The people whose literal job it is to negotiate lower drug prices make more money when prices go up. That's the system. That's who's standing between you and an affordable prescription. And it gets darker. There are basically 3 PBMs that control about 80% of the US market. 3 companies, sitting in the middle of every prescription, taking a cut of every transaction, visible to nobody. A study found that for every $100 Americans spend on generic drugs at retail pharmacies, only $36 goes to the people who actually make the drug. The other $64? Middlemen. Wholesalers, PBMs, insurers, pharmacies, each one skimming a piece. The drug costs $3 to manufacture, and 64% of what you pay goes to people who never touched a molecule. Step 3. Lobbying. The pharmaceutical industry spends more on lobbying in Washington than any other industry in America. More than oil, more than tech, more than defense. Billions of dollars every year paying politicians to keep the rules exactly the way they are. In most other countries, the government negotiates drug prices directly. In the US, for decades, Medicare, the country's biggest drug buyer, was literally banned by law from negotiating prices. The largest customer in the market wasn't allowed to ask for a discount. That's not a free market. That's a rigged one. And if you want to see the system at its most naked, look at what happened with a drug called Daraprim. It's a decades-old medication for a parasitic infection that hits people with weakened immune systems: AIDS patients, cancer patients. In 2015, a hedge fund manager named Martin Shkreli bought the rights to Daraprim and overnight raised the price from $13.50 per pill to $750. A 5,000% increase, overnight, on a drug that cost about $1 to make. When journalists asked him why, he smiled and said he had a duty to his shareholders. The public was outraged. Congress held hearings. Shkreli eventually went to prison, but for securities fraud, not for the price hike. The price hike was perfectly legal. That's the system. You can buy a life-saving drug, multiply the price by 55, and the only thing anyone can do about it is be angry on Twitter. So that's the machine. Patents that never expire, middlemen who profit from high prices, lobbyists who make sure nobody changes the rules, and at the center of it, a patient at a pharmacy counter pulling out their card, paying $300 for $3 worth of medicine. Now here's where Asia comes in, and this is where the fortress starts to crack. India is called the pharmacy of the world. That's not a nickname someone made up for fun. India supplies roughly 1/5 of all generic medicines on the planet. In the United States specifically, Indian pharmaceutical companies supply nearly half of all generic prescriptions by volume. Half. Every other generic pill an American swallows was made in India. Names like Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, these are massive companies, producing drugs at scale, at a fraction of what Western pharma charges. And there's a story behind one of those names that shows you exactly what's possible when the walls come down. In the early 2000s, the HIV/AIDS crisis was devastating Africa. The drugs that could save people's lives existed, but they cost $10,000 to $15,000 per patient per year. For countries where the average income was a few $100s, that was the same as saying the drugs didn't exist. Then an Indian company called Cipla offered to produce the same cocktail of HIV drugs, generic versions, same molecules, same effectiveness, for $350 per patient per year, less than $1 a day. Western pharma companies called it impossible. They said generics couldn't match the quality. They tried to block it in court, but Cipla went ahead and the drugs worked. Millions of lives were saved. The price of HIV treatment globally collapsed. Not because the brand name companies got generous, but because an Indian factory proved the drugs could be made for a fraction of the price. That's what happens when someone breaks the wall. And behind India sits China. China doesn't make as many finished pills as India, but it makes something even more fundamental: the active pharmaceutical ingredients, the APIs, the actual molecules that make the drug work. China supplies a staggering share of the world's APIs. Without Chinese-made ingredients, a huge portion of the world's medicine simply couldn't be produced. The drug might be packaged in New Jersey, the brand name might be American, but the molecule inside, made in Zhejiang or Shandong. And here's the detail that makes Americans lose their minds when they find out. The exact same drug, made by the exact same company, is sold for completely different prices in different countries. Insulin that costs $300 a vial in the US costs $30 to $50 in Canada for the identical product. The same Ozempic pen that costs $350 in America costs $95 in Brazil and about $115 in South Africa. It's the same molecule, the same factory, the same box. The only thing that changes is which country you're standing in when you buy it. Americans aren't paying more because the drug costs more to make for them. They're paying more because America is the only major country that lets pharmaceutical companies charge whatever they want. So think about what that means. The raw materials come from China. The finished generics come from India. The entire physical supply chain of global medicine already runs through Asia. The only things keeping the prices high in America are the patents, the PBMs, and the laws. The legal walls, not the manufacturing ones. The factories that could flood the market with affordable medicine already exist. They're running right now. They just aren't allowed to sell to you at the price they could. But those walls are cracking, fast. In 2022, the US finally passed a law letting Medicare negotiate drug prices for the first time. It's limited, only 10 drugs to start, but the principle is shattered. The government can negotiate, In India, companies are scaling up to produce biosimilar insulin and GLP-1 drugs at a fraction of the brand name cost. Mark Cuban launched Cost Plus Drugs in the US, a pharmacy that shows you exactly what each drug costs to make, adds a flat 15% margin, and charges you that. Transparent pricing, no PBM, no hidden spread, and patients are saving 60, 70, 80% on their prescriptions overnight. The model is simple. Cut out the middlemen, buy from the factories, sell at a fair margin. The same model that's disrupted sneakers, mattresses, cables, and printers. The same model that China and India's factories were built for. The only question is how fast the legal walls come down. And that question just got a lot more complicated. In 2026, the US government started imposing tariffs on pharmaceutical imports from China and India, the very countries that make the cheap drugs. The stated reason is national security. America is dangerously dependent on foreign suppliers for essential medicines. If a single overseas factory shuts down, entire categories of drugs can disappear from American shelves. That's already happened with chemotherapy drugs. So there's a real tension here. The same cheap factories that could save Americans money on prescriptions are also the factories that America is trying to reduce its dependence on. It's a tug of war between affordability and security, and right now, nobody's winning it cleanly. But here's the thing the tariffs can't change. The knowledge is out. The factories exist, the price is known. Once people see that their $300 drug costs $3 to make, you can't make them unsee it. Tariffs can slow the flow of cheap pills across borders. They can't put the truth back in the bottle. Now I have to be honest with you, because this channel doesn't do fantasy. Not all generics are identical. Manufacturing quality varies. The FDA has shut down factories in India and China for quality violations. Contamination, data falsification, shortcuts. That's real, and it matters. And pharmaceutical R&D genuinely costs money. Developing a new drug from scratch can take a decade and cost over $1 billion. Some of that high price is paying for the research that created the drug in the first place. Without that incentive, fewer drugs get developed. That's the honest trade-off. And let's be fair about one more thing. Not every drug is a decades-old molecule being overpriced. Some drugs are genuinely new, genuinely hard to develop, and genuinely expensive to bring to market. The latest cancer immunotherapies, the gene therapies that can cure rare diseases with a single treatment, these are staggeringly complex, the research is cutting edge, and the patient populations are small. A gene therapy that treats a disease affecting 5,000 people worldwide has to charge a lot per patient just to break even. That's real, and blanket claims that all drug prices are scams ignore the genuine cost of frontier medicine. But that's not what most people are dealing with. Most people are buying insulin, blood pressure meds, cholesterol pills, diabetes medication, drugs that have been around for decades, that cost pennies to make, and that are priced as if they were invented yesterday. The R&D argument is real for cutting-edge treatments. For a 100-year-old drug like insulin, it's a smokescreen. But, and this is the critical part, that argument doesn't justify a 39,000% markup. It doesn't justify insulin costing $300 a century after its inventors gave the patent away for $1. It doesn't justify people dying because they can't afford a drug that costs $3 to produce. The system isn't expensive because the drugs are expensive. The system is expensive because the system was designed to be expensive. So step back and look at the pattern. An essential product. A massive markup disconnected from the actual cost. A system of middlemen, legal barriers, and deliberate opacity keeping the price inflated. And somewhere in Asia, a factory that can make the same thing for a fraction of the price, waiting for the walls to come down. Sneakers, cables, mattresses, printers, screens. And now the pills that keep you alive. Every time, same story. Every time, the walls crack. But pharma is different from every other industry we've covered, and here's why. When Nike overcharges you for sneakers, you wear slightly less cool shoes. When the mattress industry rips you off, you overpay for sleep. Annoying, unfair, but survivable. When the pharmaceutical industry overcharges you, people don't just overpay. They die. They ration insulin and go into a coma. They skip cancer medication and the tumor grows. They avoid filling a prescription for their heart condition and have a cardiac event. This isn't a consumer inconvenience. It's a body count. And the body count is entirely unnecessary. Because the drugs exist, the factories can make them cheaply, and the only thing standing between patients and affordable medicine is a pricing system designed by people who will never have to choose between their prescription and their rent. So if you're watching this and you want to know what you can actually do right now, here are the names. Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs. Transparent pricing, no PBM, massive savings on hundreds of generics. GoodRx compares prices across pharmacies and applies coupons, free to use. For insulin specifically, Walmart Relion sells vials for $25 over the counter, no prescription needed. Biosimilar insulins like Insulin Lispro are now available at many pharmacies for $25 to $50 a vial. Civica RX is a non-profit making insulins capped at $30 a vial. And if you're looking at international options, Canadian pharmacies verified by CIPA sell the same insulin for $30 to $50 that costs $300 in the US. Those are real options, available right now, and every single one of them exists because someone decided the markup was indefensible and built a way around it. Let's go back to where we started. You're at that pharmacy counter. $300. For a bottle of pills that cost $3 to make. The pharmacist didn't set that price. Your doctor didn't set that price. The price was set by a chain of patents, middlemen, and lobbyists, each one taking a cut. None of them making the pill, all of them making money. And somewhere in India, right now, a factory is producing the exact same molecule for pennies, the same molecule that costs you $300, the same pill, the same chemistry, the same therapeutic effect. There's a pharmacist in Toronto selling it for $40. There's a factory in Hyderabad making it for $3. The drug doesn't know what country it's in. It works the same everywhere, only the price changes. Somewhere in China, the active ingredient is being synthesized at industrial scale. The medicine exists. The affordable version exists. The only thing between you and a fair price is a system that was built to make sure you never get one. But systems crack. They always do. Every single time, on this channel, we've watched it happen. And this one's cracking faster than the people inside it want to admit. If this changed how you think about the pills in your medicine cabinet, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is exactly the kind of story we tell here. And here's my question for you. Have you ever skipped a dose or avoided filling a prescription because of the price? Tell me in the comments.